Krishna. All welcome here to Srila Prabhupada's quarters, Krishna Balaram Mandir, and in particular, Srila Prabhupada's garden. I arranged with Dharmatma Prabhu, he's the caretaker here at Srila Prabhupada's quarters. I've seen this place develop over the last many years since coming here, and it just gets more and more beautiful. Thanks to the efforts of him and all the devotees that work here on a daily basis. So speaking with him, I'm leaving in a few days, so we thought it would be nice to have a program here. And he asked, and I'll do my best, to specifically try to focus on Prabhupada's quarters here at Krishna Balaram Mandir. I first came here with Prabhupada in 1972 for the month of Karti. At that time we stayed at Radha Damodar temple, of course, but this area was already in the making at that time. The next time when I came here was what he was hoping was going to be the opening, and that was in the summer of 1974. And of course, the facility was nowhere near ready. But Prabhupada had come here, and of course, he came in August. So it was very, very hot as well in Vrindavan at that time. And one of the first things coming to Vrindavan for me was learning very different ways in Vrindavan. Prabhupada, when he came to Vrindavan, he was a Goswami. Prabhupada was a Goswami. And he liked sitting in gardens. He liked sitting under the trees. That's what he preferred. As nice as a place that you would build for him, just like Bhaktivedanta Manor. I consider one of his nicest quarters in the whole society. Just the bathroom is as big as most bedrooms. There's lots of facility, beautiful sitting room. You can fit 50 people in it. But when the weather was pleasant, Prabhupada would go sit on the front lawn, beautiful lawn they had in the front. So he always liked gardens. And when we came in 74, of course, there was no garden here at that time. His quarters were 80% finished. He stayed in them. That was another feature Srila Prabhupada had. If he had quarters that were almost ready, not even almost ready, if he had facility that he could stay in and it was his facility at the temple, he would stay there. Never wanted to stay outside of temple setting. Didn't like staying in hotels, motels. He had to do it on a few occasions, but he would much prefer any temple room, no matter what it was like. So of course, although he had stayed at Radha Damodar temple for so many years, he was renting those rooms. As soon as this facility was ready, he came and stayed here. Some of the early observations, one of the very first classes he gave when he was here, which you'll see, he started talking about ugra karma, how when you make something to solve a problem, you create so many more problems that were worse than the initial problem. And he mentioned the electric shaver. He said very easily, you can shave with a blade. This was in the Bhagavatam class, one of his first Bhagavatam classes there. He said very easily you can shave with the blade. He said, but now we have electric shaver. He said, so now of course you're dependent on whether the electricity is working. Here in Vrindavan, there wasn't a lot of electricity. And if it breaks, you have to fix it. A blade never breaks. So it's saying like that. But 2 hours earlier, I was in the servants' quarters over here, shaving with an electric shaver. So that's what he was listening. He heard the sound, and that's all it took was that sound. Zzz, for like 5 minutes of zzz. He didn't say anything to me. He just chastised me right in the lecture. That's how Prabhupada dealt with me at times. He would chastise me indirectly, because I was so sensitive to chastisement, that he would do it without calling me out sometimes. So this was one of those times. I felt very honored to be mentioned in a Srimad Bhagavatam lecture, not personally, but I'm sure there wasn't anyone else within 100 feet that was shaving with an electric razor there in 1974. This is because I had become a grahasta. That means expand. So as soon as I became grahasta, I had a few things. One of them was the electric shaver. That turned into his stay here for 2 months, August, September of 1974. And you try to imagine, as I said, his room was finished. This garden wasn't there. The area was here, as well as the Prabhupada's kitchen was there, but nothing was finished, nothing was ready at that time. And you can imagine how noisy it was, because you have maybe 100 mysteries going hammers all the time. That's what it is. It's just 12 hours a day of constant chipping away. Building the temple, all the forms you see, all the pillars, everything is brick and then coated. So all that brick is cut. So these were the sounds of Vrindavan at that time. Vrindavan was very wonderful. This area was very peaceful, very quiet. We had peacocks every morning. You would hear peacocks cooing in the morning. You would see the vultures flying around, eating dead carcasses. Plenty of hogs. Plenty of hogs that take care of the sewer system. Many of those things you don't see anymore as it's become more and more of a city. But when Prabhupada, of course we know when Prabhupada came here, Prabhupada had such vision. It's what you see again and again, his vision. It was never small-minded, a broad vision. People would think, why out here? Who's going to come to this place? Juhu was the same thing. Why are you building a temple in Juhu? Prabhupada understood. This place is just amazing. How many people come, how many pilgrims come daily by the efforts of one person. So now that one person was here, and he was going to see that this temple was built. And he struggled at that time. He had become very ill. Actually, I want to go back to that later on. I wanted to talk about other things first, and then come back to that. So some of the times, one of the things, and I rarely tell this story, but it's a Vrindavan pastime here, Krishna Balaram Mandir, and Chandramali Swami's favorite story for some reason. So I would massage Prabhupada right in the sitting room. I'll go through the sitting room to get here, just on the straw mat. And each day was the same. You massage. It was almost 2 hours of massage. And you started on the head with the sandalwood oil. And then, of course, the back was always next. For at least half an hour, you massaged his back. And then come to the side. So this particular day, I'm sitting next to Prabhupada. We're both in gamchas. Prabhupada had this small little red, he had a favorite, it seemed like his favorite, red and white gamcha he used all the time. He had 2 of them. And so he's sitting cross-legged, and I'm rubbing his chest and his arms. But I'm sitting next to him, and I'm cross-legged also, but being a little gamcha, my foot was out. And I'm massaging him. And I can see he's staring at my foot. So this was not very appreciated by me, that he's looking at my feet. But I could see him really looking at it, like studying it. And I put it under my... And I just kept massaging. And he said, is your mother beautiful? And of course that caught me by surprise. He said, "Is your mother beautiful?" So that was the last thing I ever thought I would hear from Prabhupada. Never asked me about my mother. And of course I was 23 years old. My mother was approximately 50. And I'm trying to think, is she beautiful? I mean, I guess a child always thinks your mother is beautiful, but anyway, it just seemed, I didn't know what to say. And I said, "Well, yes, Prabhupada." I said, "She was a very beautiful lady. She's very beautiful, my mother, naturally." And he said, "Oh, yes." He said, "Good." He said, "Because I'm looking at your feet." He said, "And your feet, they're very pretty." And you never stop your service. You just do service. Whatever he says, you just, yeah. So, yes, he said, "They're very pretty." He said, "And it's said that if your feet are beautiful, then it means your mother, she's very beautiful." He said, "So I wanted to see if it applied." He said, "So yes," he said, "it's okay." So that was what it was like to be with Prabhupada. You never knew what was going to happen. You never knew what he might say to you. He was a person. He was pure devotee, but he was a person. And so then one of the other very, I would say, bizarre episodes came also months later when it was opening time. Now, this was at the same time. This was in September 74. And they had his bathroom. Now there wasn't running water, there wasn't a lot going on, but it appears like everything's working. Their bathroom, toilet, sink, everything's there, but we're running with buckets of water back and forth. So one day they had bought, now this is Vrindavan, 1974. There was nothing here. Nothing. You couldn't buy anything there was no across the street. There was nothing across the street. So everything, you had to go into town. And there wasn't a whole lot either. It's not it's not like they were bringing vegetables in from Delhi at that time. And you got what was grown here. Anyway, in the bathroom they put on a toilet seat. I think I still see some of those same seats in the guest house. Same, like 40-year-old, these plastic toilet seats. But Prabhupada's, he came out one day, he said, "Call Surab." Now, Surab, he was managing with Gunarnava and others, but he was the one that came in to see Srila Prabhupada all the time. He was the one that got chastised regularly by Prabhupada because of everything taking so long. And it was taking so long because they're cheating you. That was one of the things he would say, is, "Why aren't the doors up? Every day, why aren't the doors up?" This was talking about the deity doors. He said, "Well, they're cheating you." He said, "They should be up already." He said, "They're always cheating." So Prabhupada was always making sure everything was going on. He understood they were cheating us. So he came in, Saurabh came in, and Prabhupada starts, "My toilet seat is broke." He said, "Get me a toilet seat. I need a toilet seat." He said, "I'm an old man." He said, "I have to sit down." He said, "Get me a toilet seat." Yes, Prabhupada, immediately. Now he's managing a crew of whatever, 100, 200 mysteries, everything that were here, electricians. So he sends someone to Vrindavan. It took a day to find a toilet seat in Vrindavan. So they came back, they put in the toilet seat. And then Prabhupada complained. He said, "I don't want a plastic toilet seat." Huh? So he said, "Have mystery carve the seat." So this is going back and forth. So now this is another day has gone by. Prabhupada says, "Where's my toilet seat?" He brought the mystery in, the carpenter. "You make Guru Maharaj toilet seat." Yes, he was so happy. He's a mystery working in the project, building a temple. These people were devotees. Whatever they were, they're all devotees. And they may be Muslims or Vaishnavas, but they're all devotees. So when he heard he was going to make Prabhupada a toilet seat, he was thrilled. Prabhupada just wanted this seat. But for him, he was making for Guru Maharaj. Out of all the people, he was getting to personally serve Prabhupada. So he was very happy. But another day went by. Prabhupada again, where's Surab? Where's my toilet seat? So it calls Surab. Surab comes back in. So this mystery is all he has is a hammer and a little chisel, a little hand chisel. So he's making this a very beautiful, smooth toilet seat, and it's taking a long time. Anyway, this is almost done. He said, but Surab says, Mystery wants to know if you want designs on it. He said, no, I want my toilet seat. He didn't need designs on it. He was an artist. He was making it for Prabhupada. He wanted to make it beautiful, I guess. So he said, no, just get it here. So finally it came. It took 3 days from a broken seat to having a toilet seat. But this is what mattered most to Prabhupada at that time. This is what he kept impressing Surab with, despite everything else going on. He would just chastise him. Surab was amazing because he had no problem taking all the pressure he had on him. And Prabhupada, really taught him. He taught him a lot. And Surab was very happy to receive every word from Prabhupada. He never, like I did, when Prabhupada chastised him, I would just be devastated. Surab just saw it as an opportunity to do better, to do what Prabhupada wanted. He was very special in that way. Because I would sit there sometimes and I would just feel bad for him. Because I thought Prabhupada was just chastising him. Anyway, he brings the toilet seat. Is it still on there? Is that same seat still? In the bathroom? Is the same toilet seat, I guess? Yes, in Prabhupada's rooms. Same one. I don't know if anyone ever gets to see it. For me, it was a very special place. It's an important spot. You can have all the Vyasasans, but you need a place to do your business. So Prabhupada wanted that place, and he got it. So then that day, one day he came out of the bathroom, and he looked at me, and he said, it's okay. And then it was teak wood. So that was also why it took so long. He was carving it out of teak wood, which is a very quite hard wood. So Prabhupada said, now you can oil it. He said, oil it with mustard oil till it doesn't absorb any more oil. So this was Prabhupada. From building this temple for Krishna Balaram, and at the same time, he's managing to see that this seat got done. Everything. He didn't miss anything. Every detail. But it was all for our benefit. And it was one morning. It was finally a morning walk. Right up and down what's become Bhaktivedanta Marg. He would walk up and down that quiet road. Not a car, not a rickshaw, maybe a horse, camels. You would see camels. Asses also gone from this place. The asses with 200 kilos of bricks on top of them, just walking along the road. All the Bhagavad-Gita symbols, all here in Vrindavan, but they're also gone. So we're walking on the road, and one of the Maharajas said, Prabhupada, this temple is so beautiful. And of course, it is beautiful what had been done. And they said, Surab has done such a wonderful job. And of course everyone's, yes, Prabhupada Jai. And Prabhupada laughed. He said, yes. He said, everyone is saying, he said, Surab has done this, so many wonderful things. He said, but all I do is chastise him. He said, but that's my duty. He said, and he could understand Surab's heart, Surab's mind. He understood it. He could. It wasn't chastisement, it was just instructions. What I kept seeing is being He was keeping Saurabh, was keeping him humble, which he always tried to do for all of us. If he saw little pride, he would deflate your pride, whatever it took to deflate. Huh? But that saved us. We know Saurabh, what he did after, of course, Juhu, and designed for Mayapur, so many things. And of course, when the time was right, after so many years, Saurabh came right back here to Krishna Balaram Mandir. Prabhupada brought him back, took care of him, so we can build other temples in other worlds. But this was Prabhupada's kindness. It was always kindness that Prabhupada gave us, however we may have seen it. But it was that. So, then the other thing that happened, there was just before the opening, that was 1975, and Prabhupada had been in Mayapur, March. He was in Mayapur at that time. So when he was there, that was for the festival. Huh? And at that time, he was in his room, his sitting room in Mayapur. And there was one sannyasi. He had an idea, because he wanted Prabhupada's chatter. You'll see from 1970, you'll see this Prabhupada wear, every picture from 1970 to 1975, he had a gray wool chatter. So that chatter went around the world maybe 10 times with Prabhupada on his shoulders, wrapped around him, so many cities. So there in Mayapur, this sannyasi got the idea that he was going to get Prabhupada a chatter, really expensive, beautiful chatter. And then he would get Prabhupada's Mahaprasadam chatter. So the day came. This was in Mayapur, again, March 75. So he made a presentation, comes into Prabhupada's room, and he puts down this very beautiful embroidered pashmina chatter. Santush, if you know what santush is, it's a very particular hair from the chin of a Himalayan goat. And so it takes a lot of goats to get a lot of hairs from this chin. But they're the warmest thing. You pull it. They say the whole chatter, you put it in your ring and you pull it through. It's so fine, but it's also so warm. So this was a very special gift, expensive. So he puts it down on Prabhupada's desk. Prabhupada, this is for you. So Prabhupada looks at it. He says, very nice. He said, I'm familiar. He said, his father was in textiles. He said, my father had a friend who dealt exclusively with Pashmina Santush chatters. And he would go to Kashmir every year and get a supply. And of course he would give one to my father, who would give it to me. So as a boy, he's saying he had these chatters. So when he said that, of course, it wasn't possible for this sannyasi to make the exchange. All of a sudden, he just deflated the whole idea of what a wonderful chatter it was. So the devotee lost his impetus to say, Prabhupada, I can have your old chatter. But something happened to me. I was with Prabhupada for 2 years by this time. I never wanted to possess any of his items. I never thought of things like that. I just took care of them. But by his association, a seed sprouted in my heart. It wasn't a bad seed, but it was one that was never there, that I didn't know existed. But all of a sudden, I wanted that chatter, Prabhupada's chatter. See what association, you have to be very careful, your association, because that's what happens. Desires, they get transferred. So now all of a sudden, me, who was just folding it up, putting it in the suitcase, putting it around his shoulders, all of a sudden I wanted Prabhupada's chatter. But I had no means to do anything about it. So that was March. So, what was it, another month went by. When was the opening? April 9th. So here. Yeah, what? 20. Yeah, okay, the middle of April. So a month later, that I still had the desire, and I was patient, because I knew when I came to Vrindavan, I had a friend. So we got to Vrindavan, and we weren't here long. Prabhupada's all set up. And the only way to get anything was in Delhi. Even the toilet seat, they went to Mathura, they couldn't get a toilet seat. So that's when he asked for the wooden one. So to get a chadar, you also had to get a nice chadar. You had to go to Delhi. So the devotees, when Prabhupada was here, they were going once a week to get supplies, some vegetables, fruits. So I went to my friend. I was a grahasta now, so I had some rupees in my pocket. So I went to my friend and said, go to the shop and get a wool chadar. Now Prabhupada's chadar had tags still on it. Lohi brand. It was a Lohi chadar, wool chadar. That was it. Just. So I said, get a chadar just like this. So the next day it was Palika. The next day she comes back with the chadar. It cost me 200 rupees, $7. So now I have my chadar, because it was cold here. No, it wasn't cold then, was it? April. So me now, after being with Prabhupada for 2 years, Prabhupada knows all of us, but he especially, he knew me in and out. Every silly thing I was trying to do, he knew. So that day I walk in to his sitting room right there, offer obeisances right in front of him. And now I do the same thing. I had this chadar, but this is his chadar. It's just like his. And I said, Prabhupada, I just bought this chadar for myself. I said, but being you're my spiritual master, I should give it to you. And again, who was I kidding? Myself, if I thought he didn't know what I was doing. But that's how foolish I was. 2 years with him and I'm still a fool. So he said, oh, you need a chadar? And I said, well, yes, Prabhupada. He said, I have a chadar. He said, you keep it. So I could see it wasn't going to be easy. So, yes, Prabhupada, but your chadar is old, this chadar is new. You're my guru. Please, I want you to have the chadar. He goes, no, he said, I have a chadar. I didn't tell you when that chadar was there in Mayapur, when the Maharaj gave it to him, Prabhupada told the story and he just picked it up and threw it behind him like it was just whatever, So you could see, Prabhupada, he enjoyed toying with us because he always knew what we were up to. But he would play along like he did with him in Mayapur, and now he's doing it to me. Prabhupada, I said, you're my spiritual master. Please, I'd much rather you have it. No, I have my chadar, it's okay. So now we go to the third time. I always tell your stories. They're all 3 times. Things happen 3 times, and then you know what's going on. So then I just looked him right in the eye, and I told the truth, which is all he wanted me to do, was to tell the truth. And I said, Prabhupada, I would much rather have your chadar. And then he smiled and said, okay, thank you. He took the chadar, and I reached behind him. That chadar was right behind him. You see, it was shelving behind, everything shelved behind his seat. So he reached back and he handed me his chadar.
You still have it?
Yes, I still have it. I can't say that in front of Dharmatma because everything I have he wants for his rooms here, and it'll happen sometime. Displayed with my, there you go. Yes, I have that. I have some hair. Lots of people have hair. You have hair. You don't. I have some of his hair, but I have something very few people have. rice from his plate. Mahaprasadam, Maha from his plate. That's also from 1975 in Hawaii. Now I have very little. I used to give it out at times to devotees, but now it's become much more important. Our godbrother Svatantra, he died last month, so I happened to be in the room with him as he was approaching his death, and I put a piece of Prabhupada's rice in his mouth. Well, I thought that was a good place for it, so there's a few pieces left. But I think of so many things. That's special, Prabhupada's Maha from his plate, so yes, we keep it. So yes, that's how Prabhupada gave me his chadar. And I take it around the temples when I go. That's one thing that's nice when it's not under a case, is I have a little pair of slippers from Japan Airlines, the little airline slippers they used to give you back in the 70s. So I just bring them around with me and let people get Prabhupada's mercy. A Brahmin thread? I've given away dozens. I don't. Oh, yes. That was at Radha Damodar. I don't know if we're allowed to go over to Radha Damodar temple. We'll do a little more here. These were the rooms, too, when we came here. Prabhupada, one day I walked in. One of the first things I learned from Prabhupada, before I was even his servant, was how he spoke without even saying words, how he used his eyes, his expressions, to just express what he wanted. And that was very early on. But here in Vrindavan, he told me about it, kind of, and he called me in one day, and as I was walking in, he just looked over at the French doors. They're called French doors, we used to call them anyway. And the curtains were closed. So he just looked at it, which meant open the curtains. He didn't say open the curtains, you just knew it was open the curtains. Or I'd come in, and even before offering obeisance, he'd just go like that, and he would look at the fan, turn on the fan. So he didn't just gab. Prabhupada didn't gab things. He just lets you know what you needed to do, and he went on with his business. So that one time I came in and I offered obeisances, and he said, a first-class servant. He said, he does it without being asked. He already knows. If you're with someone long enough, you should know everything about him. I knew what temperature the water needed to be for his bath. Know what clothes to lay out, where to put them out, where to put everything. So he said that, first-class servant, he says, you know what to do without being asked. Second class, you ask him and he does it. Third class servant, he says, you ask him and he does it begrudgingly. He said, it was the word, begrudgingly, he said, or not at all. So in this way, he was always training, always trying to show you how to do more, how to increase your service, as he was always doing. Then another, as I was saying, Vrindavan, he had it was a mood of austerity, more than anywhere else, where he spoke about the need to be simple living in Vrindavan, not to try to enjoy the atmosphere. It's for Krishna, this is Krishna's place to enjoy, not ours. One day in the room, sitting down, by this time now here, he's getting guests, and he's getting local guests, Indians. People are coming in, they're inquisitive. And he would say, Prabhupada, with us, in your presence, it was very rare that Prabhupada would praise you in your presence. He would praise you when you weren't around to other people. But he didn't offer praise to people generally in their presence. I think it's not a very healthy thing. To others he would, but to ourselves he would chastise. But we would get to see how he praised this to others. So the one day he's sitting there and he's saying to the men, this is, we practice austerity, we live here, we live simply. And he's saying, just like my servant. He said, Srutakirti. He said, he makes my whole lunch in 45 minutes. Okay, he was very proud of that. It didn't take 3-4 hours to prepare. He said, 45 minutes, lunch is finished. And I'm sitting in front of him. And I said, yes, Prabhupada. I said, your lunch is prepared. And I said, and while I'm preparing your lunch, you're getting your massage. Then he goes, yes, massage and lunch, 45 minutes. Whole bodily maintenance finished. So this was Prabhupada's mentality here. Don't spend time just taking care. We spend our time doing bhajan. We spend our time for the deities, serving their lordships. So he was always speaking like that here. How to keep it very simple. How to keep the mood proper. And one of the big reasons was, he said, we want to be taken seriously here in Vrindavan. Mayapur was the same thing. I remember in Mayapur one day, it was the festival. 500 devotees are at the festival now, mostly all Westerners. And he was on the veranda. And from his veranda, he was looking, of course, there's no other buildings, the Lotus building, that was it. And he's looking out, at a little park area, garden. And he sees a couple. This is a devotee, young devotee, a couple Westerners, devotee male and a girl. But they were just kind of by themselves in a spot talking. And Prabhupada looked at me. And he looked at him. He said, what is this fish? Do you know that terminology? Do you know that? It's a Bengali expression. What does it mean? That's just what it means. That's why fish. That's what fish. It looks like, fish. So he didn't like it. He didn't like that this is the Dham. You got to keep very, very careful. You got to practice properly. See, there were Vaishnavas here, not just people coming in for a good time, taking a holiday. And that was not why Prabhupada wanted us to come here. So, here in Vrindavan, we had another problem with the female. It was Prabhupada's sister. She came. She was here while Prabhupada was here. She came and stayed because she just loved her big brother. Such a fortunate person, such a wonderful birth. She took to Prabhupada so much. She admired him so much. Whenever he came to Calcutta, she'd come every day. She would bring sweets to the devotees, misti dahi. And she would just want to sit in his room. And generally, Prabhupada would speak English, which she didn't understand a word of that. But nonetheless, she just wanted to be near him. Like all of us, she would come in, offer obeisances, and just sit in the corner. So now she's here in Vrindavan. One day, Prabhupada calls me. He says, my sister is here? I said, yes, Prabhupada. How did she get here? I said, I think some of the devotee ladies. He just shook his head. He said, Hare Krishna. So then, one day the bell rings, and I go into Prabhupada's room. And his sister's sitting there, sitting down next to him. So I come in, I offer obeisances. He said, sit down. like dog, sit. He just said, sit. So I sit. He said, even she's my sister, they'll talk. Because his sister was in the room. She's a woman. Prabhupada's a sannyasi. Like I said, he was a Goswami. He knew how to act in every situation. He said, she doesn't understand. She just says, I'm your sister. He says, but they'll talk. And he meant the Goswamis around here, anyone that could find reason. Prabhupada had to establish himself here. He had to establish us here. He was established. Everyone knew who he was before he ever left for America. But he had to show that his Western disciples were qualified to have people come see the deities here, take prasadam here. So he was very, very careful to see that everything was done properly. So he said, "My sister's here, you sit here." "Yes, Prabhupada." So I just sat there as they talked in Bengali. Then she'd get up and leave. So then the next day, I massage Prabhupada before lunch. He takes lunch, and I finish his lunch, distribute everything. So my room at that time, this building is going through a lot of changes as it grew. Second story went on, garden came in, so things were developing. So at that time, the servants' quarters was that little room just in there. Not this one here, but that one in there. So that was the servants' quarters. And Prabhupada would have to walk through there to use the bathroom. So I would see him a few times a day, sometimes in the middle of the night. But after he had lunch, I cleaned his dishes, I distribute the maha, then I go to take a nap. Because one thing I started to do when I became Prabhupada's servant was take naps. Because you never know when you're going to get a chance to take rest, especially when you're traveling around. So I was very eager to go into the bedroom. So I walk into the bedroom, and by this time there's a little bed in there. And I go in there, and Pishima's sleeping in my bed, like very soundly. You know, she's like 5 foot tall and this wide, and she had like 10 yards of white sari wrapped around her, Bengali style. It just like never ended, you know, just, and that's all she had usually was a sari. So she's lying in there. So what did I do? I go into Prabhupada. I said, "Prabhupada, your sister's lying in my bed." He said, he shakes his head. He said, "Tell her she can't do that." And again he says, "Don't talk," because she's sleeping in his quarters, you know. I mean, this is hysterical. But he's saying, "Don't talk, you know, you have to say something." I said, "Prabhupada, I can't say anything to her." I said, "I'm probably the only person in the movement she doesn't like, because I was always stopping her from seeing Prabhupada." He would say, "She's always coming," he said, "she's always coming." So I would say, "Prabhupada's resting," and she'd just look at me because she knew I was lying, you know, and she's here to see Prabhupada. She said, "Prabhupada, I'm here to see Prabhupada like everyone." So she would just go in. I said, so unfortunately, we didn't have a great relationship sometimes. So then he said, "Okay, I'll talk to her." So after she got up, I went in my room. I said, "Prabhupada wants to see you." So she was very happy. Finally, instead of her just going in, now her brother wants to see her. So she comes in and sits down, and I sit down, and Prabhupada starts talking to her. And they're talking for a while, and then he looks at me and he says, "Okay," he said, "it won't happen again. I've taken care of it." I said, "Thank you, Prabhupada." So 24 hours later, I go into my room, and Bisham is lying on the bed, sleeping soundly like a little baby. So I just went outside. I thought, that was the end of that. So this is how Prabhupada dealt with things, though. He was always very careful. Like even just for this engagement, I made sure you put tilak on. This is what Prabhupada did. He always looked like a proper Vaishnava. If he knew he was going into an audience, he wanted to present a gentleman Vaishnava that was nicely dressed. Even he was sannyasi. He knew, like he said, we have temples because if I sit under a tree, who will come? So the same thing. He looked proper because he knew I'm speaking to people. Who's going to listen in the West to some man with scraggly clothes and scraggly hair? So Prabhupada always presented himself very nice. He put the garland on. I say when we would get off planes, he would put garlands on all of us. He didn't put them on us. He would say, he would pick, "I'll take that one." He'd pick his garland getting off the plane, and then he'd say, "Now you use them, take the others." So he had us all looking in a certain way. So that was just the external part. He wanted us to look proper, but he wanted us to always act proper as well. And he was always showing that. And he was always showing the example. So the one time I said I would talk about later was when we came in 1974, August, September. That was a very difficult time because Prabhupada became very, very ill. After a week or so, we had letters sent to all the temples saying they could do 24-hour kirtan. This was the first time, actually, this 24-hour kirtan had started. And it was because Prabhupada was ill, and we were concerned that something would, that he was going to leave. He hadn't eaten for a few weeks. So during that time, again, construction was going on where the ladies are sitting on that little, what's it called, the deck, the patio right there. There was just brick there, but there was just flat brick, and Prabhupada had a bed outside because it was August, September, so every day is like 42 degrees, right? Every night, 38 degrees or 37 degrees. It was very, very hot, so he would come and sleep outside. And Jamuna was here, Daiva Shakti was here at that time. So we were all trying to Kaladri was here at that time. Him and I both got malaria while we were here serving Prabhupada. But Prabhupada, I don't know what it was, actually he said to me, he said the illness was because so many leaders weren't following. It's actually what he said. That's why the illness was there. So. But during that time, there was the minister, it was the governor of UP, I guess, right? He was coming, and he was instrumental in acquiring cement to finish the temple. Cement was not easy to get at all at that time. It was rationed out, how much you could get. And, of course, a lot involved politics. So this gentleman, this politician, was freeing up cement to finish the project. Now, Prabhupada had been laying in bed for 3 weeks when he came. I would put my hands under his arms to bring him into the bathroom, bring him back to his room, back and forth. If he went outside, I would, same thing. We would have to hold him up so he didn't fall. But he heard the minister was coming, and he said, I have to speak. He hadn't spoken. He hadn't been outside for a long time, but now he was going to speak. He said he had to. And it was the morning. He wasn't eating. And he called me in to a sitting room. And he was sitting on the bed. And he looked at me. He said, "You have to shave me." Again, he was going to shave because he was going to go out and present himself. I shaved my wife told me to shave. I had like 5 days. I thought, yes, shave. So I shaved, but that's what he did. He said, "You have to shave me." So now I didn't use an electric razor. I used his shaver that he had, his little Schick double, whatever it was, double razor blades. And I shaved that face of Prabhupada's. You see Prabhupada's face. You can imagine moving everything around to try to give him a clean shave. The fact that he even trusted me to do it meant a lot, because it was very different when I first joined him back in 1972. This was 1974, so 2 years before, when I became his servant. The day came to shave his head, and he said to me, he had an electric clippers that he used to do his head. He didn't use a razor blade. For that, he used the electric clippers. And I got the clippers, and I'm sitting, and he said, "Now, this is what you do." And he said, "Put the clipper here to the head." He said, "You turn it on, you go to the Sika, you turn it off. You go back to the front, you turn it on, you go back to the Sika." So he had me turning it off. Every time I took it off his head, he told me to turn it off. I didn't ask him why. I very rarely ask Prabhupada why for anything, because I figured it doesn't matter why, I'm just supposed to do it. I assumed a few things. I thought it got hot. I didn't think it was about saving electricity. That was just too much. But I figured it, because they do get hot. If you're familiar with electric clippers, they got hot. And Prabhupada was very sensitive. And then he said, be very careful around my ears. And Prabhupada, you see Prabhupada's ears. Very careful around my ears. So I did. And so now 2 years later, he's putting a razor blade in my hand and telling me to do his face. So that was actually a compliment. He trusted me to do it. So I shaved him. I helped him. Got dressed, dhoti, kurta. And then I got the tilak. I helped him with the tilak. And then I left the room, getting things ready. Then he rang the bell. I came back in. He said, it's time to go. Yes, Prabhupada. And he looked at me. He said, do I have my tilak on? Then I realized Prabhupada was just, he had put it on 2 minutes before. But he had very, very high fever. When he said that, and I just said, yes, Prabhupada, your tilak is on. He said, okay, we go. Then we took him out. He sat down, and no one ever knew he didn't feel well. Hadn't eaten for 3 weeks. He just delivered a very wonderful lecture, praised the man, said what we're doing here, which everything he said and more has come true. And then he came back in and went right back into the bed and laid down. But that was it. And it's the one thing I learned more than anything else. You never give up your service. If you can get out there, if you have to lie down, if you have an opportunity to do your service, you do it. I mean, we see Prabhupada, his very last breath, he never stopped. And he always tried to show us this example. And it's a hard one to follow. And sometimes it's difficult to even understand the level that Prabhupada would perform his service. So then he's back in bed. Days are going on. It's very difficult. And it's very, very hot. And so then one day, now this is right in the middle, he would eat sometimes a piece of orange, 1-2 slices of orange, just to get some. So one evening he rang the bell. And I went in and he said, I want you to make upma like I taught you. So I said, yes, Prabhupada. I said, Jamuna's here. He said, no, I want you to make it. He said, the way I showed you. I said, yes, Prabhupada. So that was in his room. So right outside his room, the ladies are on the other side of the door. It wasn't necessarily always ladies. Whoever was on the other side of Prabhupada's room would be trying to hear what Prabhupada was saying, because it was always relishable. Whatever it was, we wanted to know. So Jamuna, maybe Palika, they're on the other side of the door. So I come through the door. They said, what did Prabhupada want? I said, he wants me to make upma. And Jamuna became very excited. She said, get started, I said, Jamuna, he wants me to make it the way he showed it. Immediately, she just said, wonderful. She said, how can I help you? This was Jamuna. No ego, no false ego. Not I'm Jamuna. I'm the cook of the Hare Krishna movement. Prabhupada taught me everything, himself. No, she said, how can I serve you? That's a devotee. This is how we are. This is how we should be. So she assisted me. Right away she said, we don't have anything. We didn't have any, he wasn't even eating, so we didn't have vegetables. But she had a trunk, her Prabhupada kitchen trunk. And in there were dehydrated peas. So she said, she hydrated the peas, and then we made upma. I made upma with her. And brought in a little katuri. So we're all so excited. Prabhupada asked to eat. This is a great sign. So I bring it in, put the little table down, and just put this one katuri with upma in it, and put it down, offer obeisances, and left the room. So about 5 minutes go by, and you hear the little bell, ding, 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 ding. So I run back in. The ladies are on the other side, the door waiting. Is he eating? So I go in, and of course, right away as I'm walking in, and I'm right up by his bed, and I already see all the utmas in there. Now I'm offering obeisances, and I'm already thinking, oh, I didn't really eat anything. As soon as I get up, he looks at me. This utma was first class. He said, I want you to know. He said, it was very good. He said, and I thought if you made something that I like very much, that maybe it would give me appetite. He said, but I have no appetite. He said, but you should know the utma is first class. This is Prabhupada. He was there, for all we knew, he was leaving in days. But he knew I was upset he didn't eat anything. He said I ate a little bit. I always say, just like a child, when they don't like, they move it around. Make it look different. That's what it seemed like he moved it around just to make me feel better. Maybe he took a spoonful, but he had no ability to eat. But that was what he was, at the moment he was concerned about me, that I had done this service, and I felt bad that he didn't need something. This is why I'm here. Who's like that? Who do you know puts everyone before themselves? He did. So then, one night, you see they're again sitting there. So Prabhupada's bed was there. So every night I would go. No, outside where you're sitting. Right where you're sitting, that's where the bed was. Yeah, outside, not inside. Because it was a little cooler. Remember, none of this was here. So it was cool. Cooler. And it had a mosquito net that hung from the poles all the way down to the ground, the brick and Brajraj, which was keeping the brick in place. So I would come in the evening, and he would get in there, so many mosquitoes. And these mosquitoes were giving all of us malaria. I had malaria 3 times in that room. These were very special mosquitoes. They were dangerous. So we had this mosquito net. And I would come under the net to massage Prabhupada, obviously. So that was very sweet. And then I'd massage him. And then he would just say, okay. Always. See, Prabhupada was always, he let you know he was in charge. Because he was. He was the guru. He was the acharya. He was heavy. If you ever tried to do anything, at least with me, if I tried to act independently, if I stopped the massage, especially at nighttime, sometimes it would seem like he went to sleep and you're massaging him and you're tired, and you squeeze a little harder. These are the things that would go on. But he would always tell you, okay. In the afternoon or morning when you massaged him, every spot he would tell you when to stop. You did his head until he told you to stop. You did his back until he told you to stop. Do here, every part. This leg, and you go to the next one. I learned that because he let me do it on my own schedule. How many times? 3 times. I became so expert, I thought, that I just started rubbing his head and, that's good enough. And then I went to his back. So he let me do it for 3 days. And on the 3rd day, I massaged his head. And then I took my hands off his head. You massage me until I tell you to stop, not until you tell you to stop. So being his servant was very wonderful. It was very easy in many ways because I didn't mind taking orders from him. But he gave orders all the time. You had to be first class. You had to know what he wanted all the time. Otherwise, you're just interfering with his service. You're distracting him. That was important. So I massaged him, then I lay down under the bed because the mosquito net went to the ground, so that protected me from the mosquitoes as well. So he did that every night. So one night, And again, I'd have to bring him, sit him down. So one night, he was lying in bed. I'm under the bed, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning. And I hear a cane drop. I heard something drop. So I'm on the ground already, so I just roll over, and I see Prabhupada lying on the ground. So naturally I get up, I get him, and I sit him on the bed. And I said, Prabhupada, what happened? He said, I had to go pass. He said, and you're sleeping. He said, I didn't want to disturb you. He said, and I thought I had enough strength. He said, but I have no strength. So I said, Prabhupada, I said, I'm lying under your bed. I said, to serve you. I said, to help. I said, you can't do that. I said, you have to tell me. Yes, he said. Yes, he said, I thought I could. He said, but I can see I can't. So I chastised him. I said, Prabhupada, I'm just here. Sometimes I would say that. He would ask me to do something. I'd say, Prabhupada, I'm waiting to do something for you. But see, this is a devotee. This is just a gentleman. Prabhupada was everything wonderful. How could you not want to be with such a person? That's what he did. Prabhupada said he tricked all of us. One morning walk in Australia, he said, Guru, he is simple or crooked? Devotee. He's simple or he's crooked? So this is on the morning walk. So whenever he asks the question, most of us think twice. Me, I think 10 times before I try to answer a Prabhupada question. I was never volunteered quick answers. Because if he asked a question, you could imagine it's not your typical answer. So what is it? We all know. What's a devotee? Simple or crooked? Anyone?
Crooked.
Anyone else? No opinions? So, of course, he's simple. Prabhupada was very simple. I was with him every day, chanting rounds, reading his books, doing bhajans. And Prabhupada said, no, he's crooked. He said, just like all of you, he said, I've tricked you into Krishna consciousness. He said, we say, just chant Hare Krishna. That's the trick. There's much, much more. It is just chant Hare Krishna. That's our philosophy, just chant Hare Krishna. But then, many other things. He said, so that was how he tricked us all. So, anyway, then I helped him. I walked him because Prabhupada would use the bathroom a few times through the night. And he would never want to disturb me. When he walked through the servants' quarters in the middle of the night, 1 o'clock in the morning, and Prabhupada always wore shoes outside of his quarters. And in his quarters, he wore slippers. He didn't walk around barefoot. And if you had the ability to ever touch his feet, you would understand how wonderful that was. Because the bottoms of his feet were as soft as the top of his feet. And they were pinkish. And they were very soft and very wonderful. And he took very nice care of those lotus feet. He would do his own toenails. He had while I was with him, he had a little Indian-style nail clipper, which wasn't a clipper. It was just this long metal rod, about like a pencil size, thinner. On one end, it was just a sharp, knife-like thing. It was just that wide, kind of on an angle. And that's what he cut his nails with. I don't know how he did it, and I never watched because it was scary just looking at it. And then at the other end was a little ear cleaning thing you would stick in, and so he used that to do his nails and things. Where was I? How are we doing, Dharmatma Prabhu? Any questions you have or anything at this point? Yes.
In Los Angeles.
Uh-huh.
You know, they have Prabhupada's paraphernalia also. In the display, there's an electric razor.
Mm. Whoops. Don't know. Yeah. Maybe here they have also regular razor blade here that he used, but maybe it was given to him. I mean, I see things here, like even here they have it called the cooker, but then that's not the cooker he traveled with all the time. Different places. Yeah, in LA I could imagine him having an electric shaver. But he definitely let me know that it wasn't, he didn't like in Juhu, well, before Juhu Temple, when he was staying at the second floor of the flats. This was my 1975 trip. So Palika got me a juicer. You know, my whole thing was I just wanted to be healthy. Of course, probably the worst thing I could do was being juicing, you know, raw fruits, taking a lot of raw fruits in India, you know, unless they're very, very clean. But I was juicing fruits in the kitchen in that flat. So, and the juicer was loud, one of those spinning things. So I heard the bell ring. And I went into Prabhupada's room. He said, "What is that noise?" Oh, I said, "Oh, Prabhupada, it's a juicer." You know, was making juice. So much noise, he said. There has to be so much noise. I said, "No, Prabhupada." I said, "I'm sorry. It's, you know, won't happen again." So then 10 minutes later, he rang the bell. He said, he says, "Does it help you? Is it good for your health?" I said, "Well, yes, Prabhupada, I think so." He said, "It's okay." He said, "Just when you do it when it's not inconvenient." He said, "But it's okay." I never did it again, of course, but this was Prabhupada. He was just wonderful, you know. So yes, Dharmatma, did you?
There was one story that I think one time you cooked for Prabhupada and the Prabhupada told that tomorrow Jamuna will cook for you.
Oh, yes. That's at Radha Damodar Temple. Yeah. Dharmatma told, when I first got to, this is 72, Kartik time. Now imagine me. This is my first trip outside of the USA. And I'm coming to Vrindavan. One day in Delhi, arrived 2 a.m, and next day, for the first day of Kartik, we were at Radha Damodar Temple, where Prabhupada had lived for years, where he did the translating. It was just, as he called it, the center, the center of the spiritual world. He said Radha Damodar Temple was the center of the spiritual world, because Rupa Goswami started the Krishna consciousness movement there. So we get there the first day, and for me, everything changed dramatically. I had been with Prabhupada for a month, traveling all through the US. We went to the Philippines. We stopped in Bangkok, or I don't even remember some of the places. And for that month, every day I cooked for him. That was my service, cooking for Prabhupada and massaging him and answering the bell. That was my service. So now we're in Vrindavan. Jamuna's there. She's already in the kitchen. You know, you have Prabhupada's sitting place on one side and the kitchen on the other side of the veranda. So as soon as I get there, I'm staying upstairs. Prabhupada's in his room, and you can see Jamuna behind the screen door, black painted screen door, rolling chapatis and doing. She was immediately. I thought, all right, Mother Yasoda. You know, she just looked like Mother Yasoda to me. That's what she became instantly. And we had a wonderful relationship over the years. Hardly ever saw one another during those times, like so many. But she was very special. She was always very kind to me and very kind to everyone. So I got there, I didn't have to cook. I have to say that was a big relief, because I would cook and massage Prabhupada at the same time. You gotta understand, it was very, very difficult to make sure everything went on every day. Imagine 2 hours, Mataji's, imagine you're massaging him for 2 hours, and the whole time you have a 3-tier cooker in a room under heat, and you've got to make sure that it's all cooked, but you got to not burn the dal, the rice, not overcook the vegetables in 2 hours. Sometimes it might be 1 hour. So it was something to do. It was something I always thought about whenever I was massaging him. The longer I massaged him, the more I got worried. But I didn't ever let it show. And it always worked. By divine arrangement. I think by Radharani's hand, every chapati puffed up. 2.5 years I cooked chapatis, everyone puffed up. You know, nothing ever, he never criticized my cooking. He criticized me one day when I didn't cook. I let someone else cook. And he asked me, why didn't you supervise? He said, you just let him do it? He really chastised me. I felt horrible. I realized I just totally neglected my service. This is the most dangerous thing, especially with the pure devotee, with the spiritual master and the deity, is to become inattentive. That's very dangerous. That's one of the dangers that happens from that same principle of familiarity. You just become nonchalant. And that's very dangerous. So, I didn't have to cook, and I did a miraculous thing. I chanted that 1 month, 64 rounds a day, because I didn't know what to do with myself. And I guess it was just being there at Radha Damodar Temple, being in between Prabhupada's 2 rooms. Maybe it gave me an opportunity. I just sat and chanted a lot. And I was curious. Somebody else was cooking for him. Not somebody else. Jamuna was cooking for him. It's like everybody else. She's everybody, Jamuna. So I'm sitting there chanting. And I look at the door, the kitchen door, and I want to know what's going on. So I just open the door quietly, and I peek in. Prabhupada's over in the corner there, right, where his choki is. You can look on the Rupa Goswami's Bhajan Kutir. So I peek in, and Jamun is there rolling chapatis, little bucket stove on the ground. There's no standing here. This is all sitting cross-legged on the floor in this little kitchen area. She's sitting on the floor. She's rolling her chapatis just on a little thing on the floor, and then there's the coal stove. Now you put the cow dung on for the chapatis. It's like Vrindavan. It was Vrindavan, simple. That's what Prabhupada liked, that simplicity. So I look in, and he immediately sees me. Prabhupada always sees. Did you eat? Have you had prasadam? I said, oh, no, Prabhupada. I said, after you're finished, I said, we all have prasadam. He said, no, come on. He said, take prasadam. Second time, no, Prabhupada. I said, I'll take with the others. No one sits with Prabhupada when he eats. Prabhupada ate alone. If possible, he ate alone. And he didn't care to go out to these engagements, to bless people's houses and all. He didn't care blessings. He was giving everybody blessings, but he didn't have to spend 4 hours of his day to entertain people. He sat and he honored prasadam. Perfectly honored prasadam. Didn't hurry through it. Didn't talk to anyone. He just took prasadam. So now, the third time, come, he said, take prasadam. So that was the first time I learned the three-time principle with him. And I said, yes, Prabhupada. So immediately, Jamuna, happy to serve. Not, what are you doing here? I'm taking care of Prabhupada. No, she was delighted. She got to serve an aspiring Vaishnava. She was happy. So immediately she puts down a little straw mat. I'm sitting right next to Prabhupada at Radha Damodar Temple as he's looking out in this place, in the very center. I didn't think anything of it other than I was hungry and ready to have prasadam. And I knew Jamuna was a good cook. And of course, being next to Prabhupada, that was just, again, I was only with him a month. Looking back, that was a one-time opportunity. And I'm very glad he kept telling me to do it. So now I sit down, and within moments I've got a thali, katuris. She puts down some rice, and each katuri, little bit, not big plates. One of the first instructions Prabhupada gave me, don't put a lot on my plate, because I lose appetite. You don't get appetite by seeing mounds of food, at least he didn't. Yeah, no, you put, then he would ask what he wanted. He'd ask for more. So now I'm sitting and she's serving us. Prabhupada's not talking, he's eating comfortably. 1 chapati, 2 chapati, 3 chapati, 4 chapati. So now I'm doing the same. I'm happily eating. I'm by some type of Maya, Yoga Maya or Mahamaya, I'm not even bothered that I'm sitting next to him eating. I'm happy. And I'm tasting this amazing prasadam. I never cooked like that. And I thought, what an austerity. Prabhupada had to eat my cooking every day when he could be eating like this every day. But aside from that, it was very, very good. She used to make such wonderful things for Prabhupada, She wouldn't spend 45 minutes cooking for him. She'd spend 4 or 5 hours cooking for him because that's what it required. And Prabhupada loved it. The example was there, 45 minutes finished. He was happy people spent their time making kachoris, making samosa, whatever. But the principle is there. So we're eating, and we both finish. Prabhupada smiles, he looks at me. Did you like? Yes, Prabhupada, very much. Good, he said, so tomorrow you cook for her. This is Vaishnava. Not that you simply happily sit there, everybody give you this, give you that. It can be easy to get into that situation. Sit there, yes, pani, sabji, chapati. We do it over here in Krishna Hall sometimes. I sit down. If you get in late, you may as well not come at all because everybody else is served and you're just sitting there because you're at the disciple table. But it's already happened. So, yoo-hoo, chapatis. No. But Prabhupada said, now you serve her. Of course, Jamuna would never let me cook for her, and it wouldn't have been service. Nor did Prabhupada think I would do it. But he let me know the principle. And she wasn't a brahmachari. I was a brahmachari, so-called brahmachari. She was a grahasta, a mataji. Crying out loud. She was a mataji. She was a Prabhu back then. I mean, we all said Prabhu, but she was mataji. And Prabhupada said, you serve her. She served you. Now it's your turn to serve her. Never mind all this colors and the male, female. It didn't matter. Service. I happily accepted her service as a brahmachari. Didn't stop me from eating whatever she would give me. I didn't look at her differently. So the same thing. Prabhupada was always giving good instruction. But it was one of the most wonderful opportunities I had. Looking back, I can't think of anything that was like that moment, just to sit with him. I sat with them a few times with others and was never alone with them. And with Jamuna. Anyway, so that was a wonderful place. And of course, as you mentioned, one of the other things that happened there, which was memorable for me, was when I received Brahmin initiation May of 1972, 4 months before I became his servant. And it meant something. When I got Brahmin initiation and went back to New Vrindavan, I had to give up my cowherd boy service. I was milking cows, mending fences, baling hay, all that stuff for a year, off and on. But now I had a thread. So I went back to New Vrindavan, and Kirtanananda put me right in the kitchen. That was it. All day, all morning till night in the kitchen. early in the morning we would have to bathe outside. We had our own little creek. So it was dark, especially if the moon, you really understand the importance of the moon when you have no electricity. You know how valuable that full moon is. Anyway, one morning I bathed away my Brahmin thread down the creek in New Vrindavan. So of course I was devastated. And to me it meant it was taken away. It was obvious I wasn't qualified to be a Brahmin, and Krishna just washed it away. So I went crying to Kirtanananda, and he said, just see, he said, how bad you feel. That's proof of what a wonderful devotee you are. You know, so he had a way of also, clearing things up. And he just made a new thread, and he put it around me, but I felt cheated. Prabhupada had chanted on that thread. And we know you change one to the other. I watched Prabhupada do it one month after month. Put them two threads together, chant on it, transfer it to your new thread. So I was devastated. I lost it. So we're in Vrindavan, Radha Damodar temple. Prabhupada calls me in. He said, so today, get a new thread. Not sure, it was a full moon or Ekadasi. Yes, Prabhupada. So this was a process we did monthly. I gave away dozens of Brahmin threads to book distributors, pujaris, friends. That was one of the popular items, the Prabhupada Brahmin thread. So, yes, Prabhupada. So I put the thread down, but I have an idea. Just like the chatter. See, I was always deceptive and tricky with my spiritual master. But I had a plan now. I was finally going to get a Brahmin thread Prabhupada chanted on. Because when he was done, he just left the other one on his table, and then he would go have lunch. So I just had to go get the Brahmin thread. Instead of giving it to everyone else, this one was mine. Simple. So I'm watching from everything I'm doing from the veranda. This is my point. My point veranda, and Prabhupada room this way, Prabhupada that way. And you're just sitting there chanting. Remember, I'm 64 rounds a day. I'm just sitting all day chanting. But I'm chanting outside, and I'm watching Prabhupada. He puts on his tilak. I'm watching. And then he gets the thread. The new thread, puts it on. Straight, always sits very straight. And I'm watching. So then he finishes. And I'm just sitting there chanting, and he comes out his door. Every time he passes by, offer obeisances. People asked me the other day, because I said every time I would bring him a chapati, I would offer obeisances and then leave. He said, every time? This was a servant of one of my godbrothers, one of his servants. Every time? I said, yes, every time. So if you went out 5, 6, 7 times, every time? I said, yes, every time. Did you just bow down? I said, no. I said full obeisances. I said, Prabhupada never told me to stop. I said sometimes 20, 30 times in a day. Every time you go in, you offer obeisances. And if you're there more than 30 seconds, you offer them again when you leave. And he just accepted it all the time because it was good for me. It's good for us. And I never thought, I've done this an awful lot. Never entered my mind. But I learned it was important. One day I'm massaging him before lunch, and his Sanskrit editor, Nitai, some of you may know that name, Nitai, came in to ask Prabhupada questions. He would come in. So the first time he came into the room, this was during massage. So in 5 minutes, he came in 3 times, different question. First time he came in, bowed down, he offered obeisances quickly. Second time he came in, put his head down for, don't know if I heard anything, and he sat up and asked a question. So then we get to what? Third time. Third time. Pay attention to third times. They're very important. It's Times you got to make a decision. He came in the third time, he put his head down and popped up. Prabhupada said, "What is this hatchet?" He called it a hatchet. It's very destructive. It's not used for anything but just cutting down trees. That's what you... And Prabhupada's terminology, his word uses, which is so magnificent, because he really chopped them down. He said, "What is this hatchet?" He said, "You offer obeisances when you come before your spiritual master." No, not flat like stick. Just, crouch down. Obeisances like this, but not flat. No, we didn't. I have flat story too. Paramahamsa, who Prabhupada gave a sannyas to at Radha Damodar temple along with others. And some of the devotees complained that he shouldn't get it because he didn't even know any shlokas. He hadn't even memorized any shlokas yet. He was 21, I think, when he got sannyas, unknown person. But 3 years later, he became Prabhupada's secretary. He was so happy, he was so good. And when he first became a secretary, he would come in. He was big. He would do dandavats. Boom. And he was a big guy. Looked like a big teddy bear, very sweet. And he would say obeisances, and then he would offer prayers. Nice Sanskrit shlokas in praise of Prabhupada. He learned his shlokas. People criticized him. But he learned shlokas. So he did that for 3 days. Finally, he said, he's lying down on the ground. Prabhupada said, "Get up!" He said, "How are we going to get any work done? You're lying on the ground." Prabhupada always saw intention, he saw mood, he knew. With me, what can I say? I could have ran in and out of his room and not offered obeisances every time I brought a japati in, and he probably wouldn't have said anything. But he understood what he needed to do to help us. And if we didn't pay attention, finished. Like Nitai, finished. In Juhu, one devotee, morning walk, coming down from the flat, was a young Indian boy. So everyone offered obeisances. Again, dandavats, obeisances. But this young boy, he just was standing, reverentially looking at Prabhupada like this. And Prabhupada kept walking, and he didn't even look at me. He just said, "This is the beginning of his fall down." So, pay attention. Don't become inattentive. So Prabhupada walks out of his room. I'm waiting to get that Brahmin thread. He walks out right in front of me. He stops. So I offer obeisances. And of course, he's right. It's just a small veranda. So I'm looking at his feet. While I'm offering obeisances and he's on his way, he says, "That Brahmin thread?" "Yes, Prabhupada." "You can bury it under the Tulsi plant." He knew I wanted it. I was lusty for his Brahmin thread. He said, "Bury it under the Tulsi plant." This was early. I never buried anything that we gave him. It was Mahaprasadam. So I wasn't going to listen to him. I go in and I grab the thread. I'm still excited. I need this thread. Otherwise, I've got no connection to Prabhupada anymore. I grab the thread. I run. Prabhupada's in eating prasadam. Lovely Jamuna prasadam. I only had it that one day. No, we ate it every day after Prabhupada. So I grab the thread and I plop myself down on the veranda and I get the thread. And he broke every string. All 6 of them. 2.5 years, I probably changed 30 of them. He never did it any other time. But he broke it. You say, Prabhupada has a wonderful sense of humor. And he wouldn't even... You just had to know what he was doing, if you could know. So, I was not deterred. I grabbed those 6 strings, one at a time, put little knots in them. And I made it back into a broken Brahmin thread. This is how foolish I was. So then I put it on. I was so happy to have Prabhupada's Brahmin thread on, you know. He never said anything to me. I never said anything to him. What was I going to say? I didn't listen to him. So I never said anything. It was my secret. So that was 1972. So I told that story, of course, because I thought it's really funny. And I told it in Mayapur in 2005. Is the first time I had been in Mayapur since I was with Prabhupada in 1975. That's the last time I was with Prabhupada in Mayapur, 1975. And now I was back there 30 years later. And it was a big pandal outside. Hundreds of devotees were there. Myself, Hari Sari, different devotees are telling Prabhupada stories. Nectar, Prabhupada nectar. So I told that story. And then I went and sat down in the seats. One devotee friend, what's his name, Vishaka? My godbrother, Mayapur, he died some years ago. British devotee, I can't think of his name right now. Anyway, he called me over. He had some mosquito spray, Mayapur, they're like this big in Mayapur. So he's spraying, and he said, do you remember me? And I did, but I didn't. He's been there the last 30 years, you know, he never left. Padmalochan, thank you, Padmalochan. So he said, do you remember me? And of course I said yes, although I recognized his face, but I didn't know his name or anything or what had happened. He said, we were here together. He said, when Prabhupada was here, he said, you were here. He said, when I got Brahmin initiation from Prabhupada, he said, you were outside the door. He said, and you were handing out the threads, the Brahmin threads. So he's relating, I'm talking a Brahmin thread story. And he said, you gave me the thread, he said, but you didn't pull it apart. So those of you who have had it, you know, there's this very simple way to pull them apart, but if you don't do it the simple way and you don't grab those two little thingies, it can become very tangled up. So I handed him the thread. Now imagine, this young boy, he's nervous, he goes into Prabhupada's room and he's like, he can't get it apart. So at the same time he's doing that, secretary walks in, and Padmalochan's all in anxiety, and he turns to the secretary and says, can you help me with this? So Prabhupada's sitting behind his desk, and he says to him, he shouts to him, he said, bring it to Srutakirti. He knows what to do. Okay, nobody. Bring it to Srutakirti. He knows what to do. I was expert in fixing Brahmin threads. Prabhupada knew what I did 3 years before. 3 years later, he tells him to come to me because I'm expert with Brahmin threads. I can fix broken ones. I can do anything. So that was the joke. The only thing is, I never heard it. But I heard it 30 years later. Who can say Prabhupada's not with us? Huh? How can you say he's not here? I mean, to me, he was just, again, letting me know. He didn't tell me then, and he didn't tell me when it happened, although I was right outside the room. Maybe I heard it. I didn't understand. So many things he said to me, I didn't understand while it was happening. But then I understood. Bring it to Srutakirti. He knows Brahmin threads. So this was Prabhupada. Everything he did was just exciting and transcendental. Miracles. Should we stop here? Do we have any questions? Anyone have any questions about anything? Anything about here in Vrindavan, perhaps? No? No? Okay. Yes. The what? Shruto. Yeah, Shruto. That's my Yahoo account. Shruto at Yahoo. I was with Prabhupada for 3 days. I became his servant in New Vrindavan. The morning I became his servant, we left, we went to Pittsburgh for 1 day. So I was a nervous boy, Prabhupada's servant, given no instructions except from Shima Sundar, your service, when the bell rings, you go in. And morning walk, you walk next to him and you record. On the airplane, you sit next to him. In the car, you sit next to him. These were my only instructions, and they were all very relishable. So I was just next to Prabhupada. And so then we're in Pittsburgh, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I'm in his bedroom. He's in the sitting room. It was just a room for that one time he was there, but everything's always set up very nicely. So he's already in the sitting room. I'm his servant. That's it. Shima Sundar's secretary. Pradyumna's his Sanskrit editor. And we become just like in India. You have your service, that's it. If an electrician cuts a bunch of wires, he doesn't clean it up. That's for the cleaner, right? That's India style. Well, that's what it had become like with Prabhupada. The secretary was the secretary, servant's a servant. We each had our duties to perform. So now I'm looking in Prabhupada's suitcase for the first time. Big, heavy, thick, whatever kind of suitcases they wear. And there's hardly anything in there. Just a little bit of clothes, a sweater, maybe 2 sweaters, 3 sets of clothing, a chadar, his cooker, which I didn't know what I was going to do with that. And as I'm looking, I hear the bell ring. So that was the first thing I was told. Answer the bell. So I run into the room and I offer obeisances. Yes, Prabhupada. He goes, nothing. I said, yes. He said, I just wanted to see how fast you were. So he was checking me out. I'm going to see if I've got a servant. Let's see if he can answer the bell. I said, anything else? He said, no. That was it. He just wanted me to answer the bell. I said, should I leave? He said, okay. But in the very first bell ringing, he just took away all my anxiety. Because he had a sense of humor. Because he showed me how funny, how sweet he was honest. He wanted to see how fast I was. He did. And he was like that. He never took anything for granted. If you said you repaired something, he had to see it go through all of its paces. He didn't accept just because you said it worked, that it was going to work. He was like that. He was definitely, you had to see. But that's what he did. He eliminated so much anxiety just by that one bell, 1 minute. So the next day we go to Dallas. They were very special days. He showed me how to use the cooker. We cooked in the kitchen together for 3 days. I massaged him right on the floor in the kitchen so we could watch the cooker. He really wanted me to know how to do everything, and he was willing to show me. So then that day he has lunch, takes rest. Now this is all new to me. And anyone taking rest is really new to me. That was impossible. Naps were not something in any devotee's dictionary. That is just Maya. I said the only time we napped was during japa in class in the morning in the temple room, then we could fall. But we worked all day. So I went in, I offered obeisances, and I'm right next to him. I'm not in front of him. The way the door was there in his seat. So I just kind of was next to him already. It was very intimate. And he looked at me. He said, Srutakirti, your name is too long. He said, from now on I'll call you Shruto. Yes, Prabhupada. He never called me Shruto again. He just called me Shruto once. That was it. And I certainly didn't have the longest name. There were many much longer names. But I guess he was trying it out for the time. Would have been very different. Where's Shruto? But he always says Srutakirti. But he said it that one time. Again, just becoming sweeter. He's helping his servant do his service. Becoming comfortable to do his service. That's what he's doing. He's doing it because he's Prabhupada. He's doing it because he's wonderful. So then he looks at me. He said, "Do you take a nap?" I thought he was, again, I thought he was chastised. I said, "No, Prabhupada." I said, "I don't take, none of us took naps." But I just said, "No, Prabhupada." Then he looks at me. He said, "Well, I'm an old man." He said, "When you're old," he said, "you can't sleep so much at any one time." He said, "So sometimes I take a nap." And I just said, "Yes, Prabhupada." And then he was finished. And I offered obeisances and I left. And I'm thinking, who is this person I'm serving? Why did he say that to me? Such humility. I'm this little kid he dragged off the streets. He got to chant Hare Krishna. I've been living in a temple now for literally 16 months. I'm a servant all of a sudden. And he's explaining to me that it takes a nap. A person who's sleeping 2-3 hours at nighttime. Sleeping maybe a half an hour at the most, a nap time in the afternoon. But for some reason he said that to me. And I thought, no one is like this person. And I've never met anyone like him since. I see so many qualities in so many. But Prabhupada was just uncomparable. Just how he dealt with me. How he continues to allow me to do something. Allow me to do some service. It's what I always saw in him. And it gives me the confidence to somehow or other do some service. Because I know it's through his mercy. Otherwise, I can't do anything. I know I can't do anything without his mercy. But I know it's there. And I just pray he never withdraws it. So I want to thank you all for coming this evening. And we'll be leaving back for Hawaii in a few days. Hopefully moving here to Vrindavan to make a base here sometime soon in the future. Pray for us that Srimati Radharani lets us to come here and stay longer. Because from here you can do everything. And this time of my life, this is a good place to operate from. So again, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you.